Yeah, I know, a bit late to the party. I've had a busy week. I'll get to Exide in a bit, but as usual, I want to go into Jyuohger, and I gotta say, it's another nice character expansionary episode for the cast. Not in that new things were learned about them, but more in how they developed. And it's more about progressing Misao again, but not just Misao, their relationship as friends, and how the monster of the week can, I don't want to say reverse, they're using reverse instead of invert again, but at least its powers also show abilities that reverse the positions of things. So, in this way, I actually really like its design too, where it has a happy, smiling face on its back, alongside a body, a happy, smiling body on its back, and then the real body is all angry and mean. It's perfectly two-faced, and it excellently contrasts against Misao, who runs bipolar throughout the series thus far. Through his manic points and his depressed points, and it's a good monster to contrast him continuing to work through that depression and still stand up even when he's feeling bad. Which, hey, this monster turning its power on the others to make them express their deepest, darkest emotions. Things that you don't usually vocalize that well, or to not hurt people's feelings, or be an antagonistic dick or a total jackass. And kind of think of it, with the internet age, that voice has gotten a lot more prominence. And yeah, there are points where you need to hold your tongue even if you don't want to. So, honestly, one of the most amusing things is about it using this power on the group is that Leo doesn't change at all. I mean, when he's affected by it, he just acts like himself, which we have addressed brutal honesty with Leo in the past, at least consistently with his character in relation to Misao. So it's like, your power doesn't work at all on this dude, and the episode to an extent reflects that while he's still sidelined by the power, it still feels like he could be fighting the monster off with Misao, that's unaffected, Tusk, that didn't get by the blast, and while the other three are more into quarreling with themselves. And honestly, it feels like a missed opportunity to pretty much emphasize how Leo is pretty much unaffected by it. To at least get what prompts the monster to retreat initially, instead of just running off on his own after they crush Misao's morale. I mean, the monster's big plan was to use this reversal power to affect a summit of world leaders, so they would be antagonistic dicks to each other, as instead of political cooperation, where you have to do medians, you express all the things you're not supposed to do during such deliberations, and just be all types of bad, for especially concerning world relations, where you're not supposed to do that. Or in other words, don't be Donald Trump. Voting is coming. What was I saying? So yeah, it running off allows them to more address both sides of this, and how they haven't been so truthful in how they've dealt with Misao. I mean, Tusk and Misao have bonded, and Leo and Misao have come to a understanding that they don't really like each other, but they're more than willing to put up with each other, whereas Amu and Sela have either shied away from him or done their best to appease him on the short term until he can be handed off to others' graces, whereas Yamato has been more or less enabling him, and he's starting to get sick of it. And hey, at least that's something out in the open now, so that they're aware of this flaw in their friendship, and Misao needs to learn to take criticism not so personally, to get out of his depression points, and learn to be a bit more to be able to pal around good-naturedly, and what was the phrase I want to describe it? Take his lumps without taking it personally, to put him in his depression point. And he recognizes this. He takes the insulting of the others when they're under this power again in stride, and that he has to accept it. And I don't much like the graphics they use for it, as it's like the words and insults against him are physically attacking him and he's falling over. And I know that's a Japanese trope, but I don't feel it works very well in live action versus in animation. And that's kind of the failing of both this episode and X-Ide's debut, which I'll be getting to in a moment. But I was a bit baffled by the makeup they used for the in their civilian forms around their eyes to denote them under its power. I kind of liked it more with the masks where they put in a different plate which had red angry eyes on it. That was actually a very good detail, and I think it actually contrasted pretty well against the mask's normal excellent design. But I think that's more of a kabuki play thing, where, a visual stylization from classical theater to denote someone that's supposed to be more boisterous and antagonistic and that kind of thing. So I'm not big on that kind of thing, and that's always seemed something of an awkward way of expressing things versus. I don't know. At least it's a visual tick to denote this, whereas in American media, when someone has experiences a personality inversion, you usually have to go more by the acting of them with a dick, and that acting more of a dick without any other indication, and it sways back and forth as out of character when it's taken out of context. So yeah, Misao's a bit stronger from that, their friendships are a bit stronger from that, and they're continuing to move forward, and it is admittedly a decent way to address a flaw with the show, both with Misao's bipolar tendencies, as the joke is getting old. It's been over 10 episodes that they pretty much hit the same thing with him, and also showing that the others need to recognize this issue about themselves as well. Honestly, it kind of felt like a older My Little Pony Friendship is Magic episode, as in the general plot, before the show went to suck. And yes, the show has gone to suck. I don't follow it much anymore, regardless. There was something else I wanted to say. Oh yeah, the expression of the subplot. They're continuing this with Azald's hatred of Genis, in that he orchestrated this monster's removal so its power could not be used on him, so as to reveal his secret from Genis, in front of Genis, I should say, and there's a pretty good indication Genis knows from this. It's like he was taunting Azald with the knowledge that he's very much aware that Azald wants him dead, and that he's conspiring with Bangray, who took to the sidelines for the moment because he's injured from the battle to get Cube Whale, which is probably why he's delayed his coming plans. He's probably going to die with the review of Wild Tosai Dodeka King, I believe that's the expression of the final mech combination. But yeah, it's just, I don't want to say it's a filler, as it's important to the character's story arc, but it otherwise is a bit removed from the Bangray arc. I guess a bit of downtime. It's nice to see new costumes again, since they've just pretty much been recycling things since Bangray showed up because of his powers. But otherwise, once again, good episode from Jyuohger and whatnot. But here's the big one. X-Ide. And new writer, old producer, old director, and is it any good? Yeah, it's hit and miss. And we get an establishment of the guy's character, and I should really be bringing up the wiki page, because I'm going to get the names all sorts of wrong. Because I am terrible with names. Emma Hojo. So... Okay, I think I got this. Okay, we open more or less in the past. We kind of get cutaways to 16 years before the series events when the protagonist, Emu Hojo, was a kid, and after some sort of injury, his life was saved by this unnamed doctor, and that inspired him to become a doctor in the current times of the show, where 5 years ago, some kind of incident brought into the world the bugsters, which are computer viruses that manifest and grow within human bodies after they've presumably been realized through some sort of science experiment. I am, in all respects, on board with this, mainly because, well, there are types of computer viruses and unstable data that can actually affect human bodies. I've addressed this more commonly with all of my .hack reviews, specifically the IDA viruses, which, through changing electrical impulses, makes one more, it essentially removes their inhibitions and draws them to desire to be in a game while causing all types of psychological symptoms, such as what the game's called doll syndrome, where they became little more than puppets on strings outside of the game realm, because the IDA was trying to understand emotion, so it was on the outside taking them out of the IDA hosts to more fully, so they would then more fully express them in the game world, so they could learn and understand them. Another way that viruses and such can manifest in the real world is through some kind of dimensional conversion technology, which has been shown in Digimon, where the Digimon's physical forms were, at least in Tamers, I'm not saying this for all the other series, but were manifested through electrical fields collecting atmospheric organic matter, essentially, dust, particulates, and whatnot, collecting them and constructing them into a physical form. Or the Mega Man Battle Network anime, the Rockman.exe anime, had in its second series, Access, and its third series, Stream, and its third/fourth series, Beast, because Beast was in 2 parts, the technology known as dimensional areas, where by encompassing an area in a specific field, specialized programs and artificial intelligences, that were given a physical form through the computer interfaces, visualizing them as in a certain way, could manifest in the real world. Now, since this is the pilot episode, we don't have an exact idea of how they're doing that. Hopefully, they will be able to explain that in some form soon, whether it's just a background EM field that is propagating these viruses, or if they possibly went the asteroid NetNavi's route of some type of programming evolution allowed them to just do this from EM fields themselves, and the viruses can propagate inside of human bodies because, believe it or not, we have our own physical electromagnetic field, biological electricity and all that. It's kind of a slow burn kind of thing, but it's just general. Our bodies emit types of radiation. Some of it is in the electrical band and all that. So it's not completely out of there. Fiction has explored this kind of stuff before. It's just you need to really elaborate it. You can't have it set in commonplace modern day and expect people to be completely on board about it. You need to have the rest of your story support that for them to not believe it's so much bullshit, but I am okay with this because a lot of media I like has had these kinds of stories in them before. Several of them have been done by Toei, so this is kind of still their wheelhouse. But yeah, Emu Hojo in the modern times is a pediatric intern, pretty much from the influence of the man who saved him, wanting to be like him, wanting to help people in the same way. So he has a good heart. He takes his job very seriously when he's on the clock. But the thing is, he is JD from Scrubs. He is totally JD from Scrubs. And that is both good and bad because, one, Japanese humor doesn't completely cross culturally because he is a complete and utter goofball. He is constantly appears to be a slacker, even though he takes his job seriously. He is kind of obsessive with his hobby of being a gamer. In fact, he is this secret gamer M, which, okay, makes sense as that's a pun on his name of Emu. I was going somewhere else with this. And he lets himself be pretty much just berated and down-talked to those around him. And, hey, that's not completely unfair for everyone to be like that, since he is an intern. He is at the lowest rank in a hospital where pretty much everyone else can order him around out of seniority. These are all, story-wise, make sense things as long as he keeps certain things in mind, but those are the things not really stressed in the story that much. Over so much of him being a goofball screw-up that doesn't seem to know how to do his job correctly. So the intern part of it, it feels like it needs to be stressed a bit more to foreshadow the inexperience that he needs to move past, and possibly the series will be taking him through, especially if they're going to continue the whole medical drama angle that they're setting most of the story up as, with how the gaming-based writers will be surgically removing a computer virus from human hosts by pretty much beating them up with game cartridges. This is Kamen Rider at its best because it is completely insane. The 5 years back thing for the bugsters that are alluded to is tied to 2 points. One, the Genom Company, which is a gaming organization that I presume is supplying the gaming drivers, had some kind of incident, so this would date this back to this threat emerging in 2011, meaning that would have been the O's years and I shouldn't say the years, as O's year and Fours' year when this popped up in the background. So Fours was pretty localized around their school of Amano-no-gawa, while O's was a bit more... They never exactly pinned down where he was hanging out. I'm definitely going to say a suburb of Tokyo, nonetheless, because most of the Kamen Rider stories happen in Tokyo, but Tokyo is a ridiculously big city. So I'm not going to gripe on that and for all we know, it might have been a small-time incident versus Drive's global freeze or the individual dopant crimes, which were pretty much isolated to Futo in the first place, so the dopant guy memories didn't exactly get widely distributed, so that's another buy on that, and why these probably haven't been noticed so far. Plus, viruses and infections, unless you have massive outbreaks, can be contained while they're still in the mutation stage of the virus, and pretty much I'm betting that's what the show is going to go through an arc of. Widespread infection, mutation of the virus to a more powerful form, explosion and outbreak where the threat grows and culminates into something everybody's going to have difficulty handling, and then of course the quarantine phase where they wrap things up. And I just named the titles to the original 4.hack games, so you see where I'm kind of in getting into the show already. Something that threw me for a loop is the revelation of the lead female character, Asuna, being a video game program. Yeah, that was a bit odd, and I really hope they expand on this next time, as she's doubling as a nurse and a assistant to the Minister of Health in the show for Japan that is obviously aware of this infection and doing everything they can to quarantine this with the association of the Genom Corporation, who I presume is supplying the drivers to either quell this infection because it's their fault and they're taking responsibility for it, or they're quelling the infection to encourage it to evolve so they can study it, or otherwise developing this weapons technology of, gaming-based equipment for their own pursuits. Again, first episode. We don't know where it's going yet. It can go a lot of different ways. That may end up surprising us because there are a lot of ways they could take this from just what was set up here. Especially since there are obviously other gaming writers already active, and Emu is just joining a host of them. Pretty much main plot deals with Emu getting into the groove of this secret virus when he takes care of a patient that was freshly infected. Now, we're definitely overstressing the inexperience angle here, where in his zeal to treat the boy's illness, the boy is a little bratty boy is the one that's infected by it because, again, he's a podiatrist, so it makes sense to have that angle on this, even though I am hoping it doesn't lead into too many kid plots because, ugh. Where was I going? Oh, yeah. In his zeal to make the boy feel better, at least emotionally, so they can focus on treating his actual illness, he accidentally breaks the kid out of quarantine because he didn't check with any of his superiors, nor even the person who put them in this special isolation room in a sub-basement of the hospital that the guy has obviously never seen, and, requires a special passcode being put into an elevator alongside a special containment bed for the one who's suffering from the illness to even get down there. Now, I would think these would be brain-dead obvious signs that you should not remove this person without knowing what is going on. And it's like a how stupid are you moment in that you ignore obvious safety and the well-being of the patient to make them emotionally feel better. So it's like, I'm swaying between liking the guy and thinking he's an utter incompetent idiot at his chosen profession, and that is never a good thing. He makes up for it, certain, but it's like, you're swaying too far into goofy while trying to set up the character, as this is obviously something that no real doctor, no person who would even who even have obtained their medical license would have done. And it's like I want to use that Venture Brothers clip of Billy Quizboy stammering of where he got his medical license after I asked the question, "I demand to know where you got your medical license, sir." I've used that joke a few times on the show. It would make sense for me to pull that up in response to his actions, because really, despite Mike McClane, I don't think it's that bad an episode. It's just like, I'm not sure if the comedy will work for me yet. The writer for this show is previously known for writing Lupin Part 4. I have not gotten to that, but Lupin is if you're not familiar, Lupin the Third is a multimedia franchise beginning as a manga in the 70s and has continued onwards in multiple TV shows, movies. It's about a professional thief, Arsene Lupin the Third, and the series really works because it's all done with a tongue-in-cheek flair, that it knows how ludicrous it is, but damn it if it's not told very well with how Lupin is pulling off all of his heists. So that kind of comedy works for that kind of show, but it needs, for Kamen Rider, we've had silly entries in Kamen Rider before. We've had ridiculous concepts turn out to prove to be excellent. Fruit Riders, for example, because that seems, Fruit-based Samurai seems like a ridiculous concept, and yet people now consider it one of the best shows in this franchise. So I'm not knocking it on concept. I'm just concerned that the comedy that made Lupin Part 4 ridiculously liked by people may not entirely work for Kamen Rider, as they they go for different tones. I don't think, again, I don't think it's bad. I'm just concerned that with how they set everything up in the episode, it might be something that overshadows the underlying medical drama. I mean, as funny and okay, again, to make the Scrubs comparison, Scrubs was primarily a comedy, but it was like Futurama in that it's a comedy show that can really make you cry when they stress its the actual real life consideration of the drama going on. So I'm kind of swaying back and forth on good and bad points on it, and in total honesty, the scenes with Emu as X-eyed, they 100% totally worked. It totally sold me on the SD form for X-eyed level 1. It sold me on his gaming expertise, allowing him to almost intuitively learn the driver's abilities, because it's not just an out-of-nowhere ability. He's developed that skill set through his gaming, like Kenta did in Mega Ranger, so I'm on board with that. I liked the form change from level 1 to level 2, where he just casts off the armor. I don't know how he got from facing forward to the face mask that was facing forward in level 1 to being the backpack in level 2. I don't think that transition worked very well, but him almost immediately mastering the abilities of X-eyed and the Mighty Action Gashat, that was pretty good. Probably because he was familiar with the game beforehand, that he could know how the abilities work and how to best take advantage of them. They explained the big chocolate cubes as power-ups for the underlying game in the Gashat, which is the cartridge he inserts into the driver, as types of power-ups, as it's a Mighty Action X is a side-scrolling platformer in the vein of Mario and Sonic. And in fact, they did, X-eyed in level 1 did the spin dash of Sonic in the battle, so that is another good use of the many coming game references for the show. Before I get back to that, there's an amusing tangent in there, where in the flashback to 16 years in the past to mid-2000s, Child Emu receives as a gift from the doctor that inspired him to, in the present day, to be a doctor, he received a Wonder Swan color. Now, for those that aren't familiar with the Wonder Swan and haven't watched my Digimon Fighting Games review, the Wonder Swan was Bandai's answer to the Game Boy, except they were so utterly crushed by the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance, because the original Wonder Swan was in black and white and was already facing up against the Game Boy Color in sales positions, because it released after the Game Boy Color. And then the Game Boy Color was discontinued for the Game Boy Advance, just as they got the Wonder Swan color out. And as a result, there are only 3.4 million Wonder Swans in existence, and a little over 1 million of those are the Wonder Swan colors. How the hell did they acquire one of them in, I presume, to be good shape? They didn't show it working, so obviously it could have been one that just wasn't in working order, but it was still in good shape for them to use it in a flashback scene. I credit them the dedication for that, but that is just, it's not even an esoteric reference, it's just a, how the hell did you get this for this one scene kind of thing? Because, yeah, 1 million copies, there are 80 million Game Boy Advances in the world. It's ridiculously easy to get one of them. Wonder Swan, not so much. Anyways, X-eyed transitioned to level 2. Too much pink energy is dangerous, but wheelmen wear pink. Yeah, if you've seen my posts on Tumblr and Twitter, I have had reservations with X-eye's design. I didn't like the pink and green contrast, even though I know it was more of a retro gaming thing, but seeing it in action, you sold me. The color isn't irritating like I thought it would be. So obviously, Rainbow Zoken is doing their usual good work with not making the costumes obnoxious. Aside from Mugen, God, Mugen was a failure on those accounts. So I'm also on board with the whole design aspects of the show with him, and also the monsters that are the interim ones appear to be taking design elements from the games they emerge from, or the game. I shouldn't say emerge from, but the games they base themselves on before infecting people, because obviously the game cartridges are as infected as with this virus as physical people are, so there's got to be a deeper connection to that if a bad guy from a game is manifesting in the real world. But I'm betting that, again, that's something that's going to need to be further expanded upon to justify its events. And I kind of like the mooks they have here, where they have them in underlying bodysuits, and then others are in their own clothing, which we saw last week with Ghost's final episode and the first appearances of these things, where they were all dressed in stereotypical monk and priest attire. So that answers that if that was going to be a consistency thing, or one writer ignoring what was going to happen in the show after that. In a way, they tied into, again, the cartridge they were basing themselves off of, where half of them were dressed as chefs, and Mighty Action X6 power-ups were all related to foodstuffs. Oh, something I didn't mention in that, due to the gaming system where Xide manifests some type of energy field into existence, which is kind of feeding into the dimensional area thing I was addressing before from Mega Man Access and Stream, that when they manifest and transform with all these objects around, it means they have all kinds of intermediary power-ups to give the writers special abilities outside of just their base powers, because we know there's not going to be that crazy a form change system, because a single Gashat gives them both level 1 base form and level 2 normal rider form, and then any intermediary or special power-up combinations are going to be through a separate Gashat that's going to combine with them into a level 3 form, which we presume is not going to give them automatically a new weapon, but probably just some type of more special power, which is also going to be based on different games, and we've gotten an idea of some of them as the show itself introduced about 10 of them already, and we know that there are 4 already that are going to be base rider forms for 5 of the existing riders that we have information on, which leaves the other 6 to be power-up forms for the lot of them. They're probably going to make more than 10 Gashats, but it's questionable which ones are going to be for new riders, as we know there are other riders, or are going to be just part of the level 3 forms. Again, first episode, they're alluding to a lot of stuff here that's hopefully going to be expanded upon. We just don't know yet. But the power-ups thing is going to be interesting, as it would be an easy way to Deus Ex Machina a lot of battles to go for or against certain parties. And that's definitely going to be a double-edged sword, as then they can bullshit a victory for one side or the other when it didn't seem like that would be justified. And that's something that they're going to need to use either sparingly or put some restrictions on it in how effective it can be. Graphite. It's the only general villain we have at the moment. It's pretty much a green dragon that, admittedly, from design-wise, looks more like a Feminshu, the overlords from Gaim. It's like, he's kind of dragon-based too, so I was kind of thinking of, I'm forgetting the green overlord's name, the one who partnered with Michi during that, because it really looks like more of an overlord version of Ryugen. At least that was what it was reminding me of. And the segmentation of it also a bit reminded me of the designs for the Cyclone Dopants and Kamen Rider Cyclone from, of course, again, Kamen Rider Double. I don't know why that this series is suddenly calling so many references that to my head, but it seems to be, there seem to be some parallels there that are otherwise getting in my head. So I think that's everything I wanted to say about it, but otherwise it's a good start to a new Rider series, and with any luck it will not get anywhere near as bad as Ghost, or conversely, it will just stay as a good series throughout its run. Who knows at this point. But yeah, I'm definitely leaning to give the show slack for the moment. Other updates. About done with the Spider-Man videos. I've got one left to do for release in November. I'll be getting to watching O-Ranger in the next week. So, I'll probably end up moving these videos to Friday, as there's some issues of getting them out any earlier. Xide has been dropped by Overtime, who I use usually to get these videos out on Thursdays normally, so they can focus on other projects. I like Overtime. They're not my usual preference between them and TV Nihon for doing these, but since they dropped it, another fan subbing group that started up just to sub Xide called Excite started up. And I have the feeling they're going to be the next Izir and Orange Range. So, no, not Orange Range, Orange Lion, in that they sub the show, then disappear either near its end or after its end, so their work is not much around anymore. So, I've seen their startup work, and it needs improvements. They're a new fan subbing group. Most of them don't exactly have the best work just out the door. I'm not trying to slam them. If you're using them, all the power to you. It's just that with the fan subbing groups, when a new one pops up, they usually need a bit of encouragement to get to their best, and for these things, I try to go with the most accurate, not whoever is proclaiming self as the not TV Nihon alternative that so many of them end up doing when Overtime doesn't do something. So yeah, if you're using them, no issue with them. Have at. I just need to delay these so I can have contrasting opinions, and I don't want to ridiculously slam someone that's just getting into this, because I don't... More people who are fan-subbing things, the better in the long run, because then you got contrasting opinions, and more stuff gets subtitled in the long run from getting more of them out there. I think that's all I got now, and I will see you all next week.